Basically, my first question, everybody knows that you're from a wrestling family background, your father, your brothers, and stuff like that. At what age did you decide that you wanted to become a pro wrestler?
Oh, I knew it. I knew it since I could remember. It's been my dream and my life. I grew up in it. Obviously, as everybody knows. Everybody had jungle gyms in the backyard. I had a wrestling ring.
Right.
It just for me, wrestling has always been a part of my soul.
Right.
It's not my soul, but it is a part of it.
Now, did you have any pressure from your family to become a wrestler or to enter the business at all? Or?
God, I was never pressured to enter the business, but there was a lot of pressure on the name, holding the name, wrestling with the name. That was a big pressure on me. And it's not that they put it on me, I put it on myself. You take my dad, who's a legend, in Mexico, not only Mexico, I mean, he's very well respected amongst the wrestlers, the older ones, and his generation wrestlers, and also promoters, and then my brothers also.
Right.
Which, all of them, Chavo, Mondo, and Hector, they all held up the name right. So, yeah, I had a lot of pressure.
What was it like growing up watching your father wrestle?
Well, I never really caught my dad in his prime. The age difference between me and my older brothers is obviously there's quite a bit. There's 19 years between me and Chavo Sr.
Right.
I kind of got my dad towards the end of his wrestling era. And even then it was, he's my dad. It was very exciting to see him wrestle.
Who helped train you?
Well, here's the deal. I had a wrestling scholarship in New Mexico. And I got hurt and I came back home. They redshirted me. And then when I was going to go back, they canceled the wrestling program. I didn't want to go look for it. I was tired of dieting and all that. So my brothers had already all left the house. So I had one friend, which is my best friend, which was interested in getting into the business. His name was Art Flores. He was with me in the LWO,
Right.
They used to call Spider him.
Right.
And another friend that lives in El Paso, Texas. He was in the wrestling team with me up in high school. His name was Hector Rincon. He wrestles in El Paso. He does independent shows and he wrestles as Hurricane Hector.
Right.
Yeah.
So was your brothers helpful to you at all, or?
Well, what happened is I trained with those two friends with the guidance of my dad.
Right.
My dad had just had a stroke, so he really couldn't get in the ring. So he would just guide me with my friends and tell me what to do and exercises and all that, which is basically I knew him because I used to practice with my brothers when I was smaller. I'd do professional wrestling style practice, and so I knew what he was talking about. It's just when we got into more technical stuff, that's when he would even get up in the ring and show me. He couldn't physically be there, but he was there orchestrating me. And my brothers helped me out, here and there. I got a lot of knowledge, and a lot of my psychology comes from my brother Chavo Senior. I just agree on his psychology. I'm not taking nothing away from my brother Hector and Mondo. I mean, I have a little bit of everybody. Even a little bit of my dad. And that's what I did. I just took a little bit of everybody's style. My brother Hector, my brother Mondo, Chavo, my dad, and I just kind of incorporated it into my own.
Were they tougher on you because you were a relative, or did they take it easy on you? Or?
Yeah, they're tough. My brothers are perfectionists. We're all perfectionists when it comes to the sport because, like I said, it's fed us. My dad came from a very poor family, and he went into a gym to learn how to box. There was no boxing. There was wrestling. That's how he got into wrestling.
Right.
And it, by the grace of God, he got out of that. The poverty level, and was able to provide a good living for his family. And, through wrestling, we it's fed all our families. It's fed me since the time I'm born, and it's feeding my children now.
Did any of the other wrestlers around that time, was that the break that you got because of your family? Were they jealous of you at all, or?
I don't think they were jealous of me. I never feel that my family was jealous of me. I just feel that.
I mean, other wrestlers.
Brothers?
No, or any other wrestlers jealous that you got into the business?
Oh yeah, there was a lot of jealousy. There was a lot because they pushed me. Going into Mexico, which is where I started. They had me already in the semis. In those high matches without even paying my dues. So naturally, I mean, like the first 3 months I wrestled in Juarez. I mean, I'm not kidding you. It was literally almost a fist fight every time I went into the ring with the other wrestlers.
Now, what college did you go to again?
New Mexico Highlands University.
What was it like trying to be a wrestler while going to college?
That was hard. It was real hard. I wasn't ready to leave home. I'm a mama's boy.
Right.
Yeah. I was real close. I'm real close to my mom and my dad. Well, God rest his soul. I was very close to him. I just wasn't ready to leave.
Right.
So it was real difficult for me.
Were you able to finish college, or did you?
No, I didn't finish.
Just went into the business.
Yeah, went into the business.
What would you recommend to young wrestlers about going to college versus training and wrestling?
Well, one thing, if you finish your college, man, you're always going to have something to fall back on. Period, over and out. Education doesn't mean you're going to go out and be a millionaire. But what it does make you a better person.
Right.
I know people that have degrees in certain areas and they don't even do that. They're working in something else. But college is very good. Like I said, I focused all my efforts on wrestling, because I really didn't have that. It wasn't for me.
Right.
So as young wrestlers, yeah, naturally the right thing to say is go to college. But I'm going to tell you from my point of view, follow your heart. Because if you work where your heart is, you're going to give it 100%. And if your heart's not into what you do, you'll never be happy.
It's true. Let's talk about your pro wrestling debut. I believe you debuted in 1987 for EML. Would that be right? Or
yeah, in Mexico City.
Right.
I had debuted before.
Right. Yeah. Let's talk about some of your first matches and stuff like that. How'd you prepare, and what was it like?
Well, it was really difficult for me because growing up in the States, I'd speak Spanish to my mom.
Right.
But I'd speak English to my dad. Basically, everything was English now, So I really couldn't. I could understand Spanish fluently, but I couldn't speak it fluently because I didn't have practice in it. So when I first got there, I had a lot of problems communicating with the boys on high spots, on finishes and stuff like that. And they tell it to me in Spanish, and I was having a hard time because I would try and change it in my mind to English, and it just doesn't work. If you're going to speak in Spanish, you got to think Spanish.
How did you basically learn the language?
Just by being there, and talking with my family. I got family in Mexico. I mean, just starting to talk, I picked it up again, because Spanish was the first language I learned anyway.
Right, so it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
Who did you wrestle in your debut match?
In EML?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Okay. Basically, that was your first major promotion that you worked for, besides like the little territories in Mexico.
Right. Mm-hmm.
What was the difference, as far as working for the smaller groups and going to EML?
Well, in Mexico that time, I guess the organization,
right?
Being organized. That's about it, and knowing you are going to get a paycheck instead of wondering if you're going to get paid or not.
Right. What are some of your memories of winning the WWA Trios title with Chavo Amando?
Wow, man, that was a great experience for me, being a trio with him.
Right.
Man, that's probably where I learned a lot. I learned a lot about the business. I learned a lot about wrestling. I learned a lot about psychology. My brother Chavo taught me a lot about psychology when we were there. A lot.